Good morning. This is Ginette calling from my house, I guess. I don't know if you can see me or what. I was having technical difficulties this morning with my computer. All of a sudden, it says that my browser no longer supports live video. I've done nothing different, and I don't know what's going on. So I'm on my phone. Bear with me. Good morning. How are we doing? Thank you for letting me know that I'm here, that you can see me, because I have no idea. Today's topic is going to be on addictions. It's a pretty serious topic, but it's a needed one. With what's going on right now with the stressors of COVID-19, being isolated, people are drinking more, they're smoking more cannabis, they may be taking more prescription drugs, whether they're drinking more coffee, because coffee is a drug too. It could be over-the-counter medication. It could be food. We can be addicted to a lot of things. But some addictions affect us, our health, in a more serious way than others. So I'm going to talk about those addictions today, per se. Let me just find a way on how to put my phone here. Good morning. Just give me a second, so I can read my notes. All right. So what we're going to talk about is how addiction affects us, the low-risk drinking and cannabis guidelines, tips on how to recognize signs and symptoms of addictions within yourself or within someone you love. Okay? It's not always that easy. And ways to support someone who is struggling with addiction. Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about. Before I get started, just know that this material that I'm going to talk about belongs to the Department of National Defense. The strengthening of the forces are the ones that put this material together. This is not made for distribution, for your own personal business or anything like that. Feel free to share it with your CAF members, families, and stuff like that, but it should not be used to distribute for monetary purposes. So there are two types of dependence. There's a physical one, which is when you stop using the drug, your body still craves it. Going through a withdrawal, kind of what you would say, right? So people experience withdrawals all the time, whether it be with food, with a cigarette, with alcohol, or other serious drugs that you may be consuming that you shouldn't be. Even your withdrawals from your pain medicine can happen. Then there's the psychological dependency, which is you spend most of the time thinking about it. Okay? So you're not necessarily going through physical withdrawals. However, your body, you're always thinking about it. You're at work, you're thinking about it. You're at home, you're gardening, whatever. You're always thinking about that drink, that puff, that smoke, that painkiller, whatever it may be. Okay? Either way, they're both an addiction. Okay? So some people think that you need to have a physical addiction to have an addiction. Well, there's not just physical, there's psychological as well. Just so you know. So aside from the actual properties of a drug, how do we know how they interact with the brain? Okay? What other factors may determine the impact of a drug? Hi, Edith. Thanks for tuning in. There's all three of you, Morgan, Edith, and Lisa. Woohoo! So the dependency, the impact depends on how much you're consuming, how you're consuming it, if you're injecting, if you're eating, if you're snorting, whatever it may be. Depends on how fast it reaches the brain and how fast it's absorbed. And the absorption depends on the person, how much fat you have, what you've eaten, and what you've done, right? And how it's consumed, right? So if you're injecting, it's going to be absorbed a lot quicker than if you're ingesting, but for example. And then how quickly it metabolizes in the body, right? And how it leaves the body. Okay? So our metabolisms are all different. Sorry, I'm just having an issue here. So there are three risk factors that we have to be mindful of, that we have to keep in mind, that can influence substance problems. Okay, whether it's substance use, gaming, gambling, addiction, whatever it may be. Okay. Oh, sorry guys. I don't know where to put my phone. I don't know where. I'll just leave it there. So the first one, there's genetics, environmental, and there's personal, right? So when all of those individually have an effect or have an impact as a risk factor for becoming addicted to something, but the greater risk is when all three are involved. Okay, so if you are a person that has all three risk factors, then you may be at risk of an addiction, okay, a higher risk of addiction. And I'm going to explore those here in a minute. So your environmental risk factors, things like your workplace stress is linked to twice as many substance use problems. Okay, so right now with COVID-19, we are in a tremendous amount of stress. Okay, we're all in the same boat, but we're all kind of fighting a different battle. I'm going to be honest with you. Since this started, I have been consuming a lot more alcohol than I usually do. At first, I thought I was kind of like on a vacation, and we were drinking more than usual, and then it kind of wore off. But you have to be careful of the signs. So when I realized that I was drinking too much, I noticed, because A, I'm not feeling that well. B, I'm tired, I'm sluggish, I'm not feeling good. My body's not happy. So it's an indicator for me that I need to slow down and take a break, right? Right now, what I'm going to talk to you about are guidelines, okay? They're guidelines for your health. So these tips that I'm going to give you is not to make you stop drinking, it's not to eliminate everything, it's for harm reduction. Harm reduction in your body, in your health, okay? So the environment that you live in, right now, the environment that we live in can cause a lot of stress, and people turn to substance to cope, okay? Whether it's cannabis, whether it's painkillers, whether it's alcohol, or something else that's illegal. 40% of CAF members attribute their source of stress at work for a work environment. So it's no brainer. You guys in the Canadian Armed Forces, you have a unique job, right? Your stressors are very different than mine in the civilian world. And sometimes we turn to alcohol for relieving that stress. But there are other ways that we can cope, okay? Also, another stat that came out was CAF members with high risk of drinking habits and have also reported CAF members with high risk drinking habits also self-reported lower scores on their job performance. Okay, so those with addictions typically don't perform as much at work as well. Okay, your genetic risk factors. Okay, so this is your family history. If you have a father or a mother who is an alcoholic or a drug user or a substance user, then you're at risk, right? Your mental health problems, if depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder runs within your family or you have it, you're more at risk of developing an addiction. Okay, genetic is not the only thing. Environment does play a role. There were studies that were done where a set of twins who grew up in the identical home and had the identical parents and everything was the same, where they grew up in a home where there was an addiction, alcoholism. And one twin ended up being an alcoholic and the other one didn't, right? They grew up in the exact same family house. So just to show that genetics is not a pure risk. Okay, other things like environment is also attributed to that. Okay. Then we move on to our personal risk factors. Okay, so your personal risk factors are a person is someone who is at greater risk of dependency because they're lacking coping skills. The resiliency is not strong. Okay, they have a low self-esteem. Someone who has a low self-esteem will turn to substances to help them make them feel better. Impulsive. Okay? Someone who's impulsive, they will act according to their feelings and not think through the consequences. Okay? Someone who places unrealistic demands on themselves or others will quickly become disappointed and will turn to something to kind of make them feel better as well. People who bottle up their emotions inside and who do not have a support network are more at risk of substance abuse. So if something you're keeping up, your anger, your frustrations, your stress, whatever it may be, if you're one of those people that don't like to talk about it and just keep it inside, you're more of a risk of coping with those things by using a substance. Okay? So it's okay to talk to someone, to reach out. There's nothing wrong with that. We're human beings. No matter what we do, our job title is, we all need support at one point or another. Okay. So while researchers continue to study the mysteries of addiction, some things are clear. Nobody chooses to become addicted. An addiction is not simply due to personal weakness or character flaws. Okay? An addiction takes whoever it wants. Whether you're a CEO, a doctor, a health promotion specialist, a garbage truck worker, a lawyer, it doesn't matter. Addictions will target whoever it wants. Okay? So what are some reasons why someone may choose to drink, smoke, use cannabis, game, gamble, or consume other drugs? Okay, we kind of talked about it a little bit already. We'll go through it again. So it's stress, whether it's too much pressure or the lack of resources or the lack of things to do, right? So if you're too stressed at work or you're too bored, right now during the COVID-19 when people are isolated, people may be bored. If you're living alone or you're just two or whatever, you may be drinking more, right? I'm noticing people are doing a lot more day drinking nowadays, right? But just remember that even though you're home, you still have a duty to work, right? We could be called upon work and be expected to be at work for the next 30 minutes, within the next 30 minutes. So keep that in mind if you're indulging in some alcohol or some cannabis, okay? Poor communication can also result in someone for using alcohol or gaming or something like that. Resentment. Working so hard and not being recognized for your work. You just keep giving, and you feel that nobody's appreciating what you've done. Okay? So that has a tendency of going more into substance use or gaming. The availability of alcohol, okay, or drugs, or the game, whatever it may be. If it's always there, if it's at your fingertips, you're more likely to go to it. If you have to work harder to access it, then you're more likely to think about it and say, is it really worth it? But if it's right there all the time, then most likely you'll be accessing at your fingertip whenever you want, which is a dangerous thing. Okay? Shift work. So dealing with shift work, trying to stay awake, trying to cope, trying to manage the everyday life while you're working a shift work. Your drinking culture. It's huge. Military has a huge drinking culture. Nova Scotia has a huge drinking culture, right? Being at home. It's crazy how, thank you, Lisa. It's crazy how our culture can swing us to believe in one way or another. I grew up in Nova Scotia, in a small town where we were bored a lot. So what did we do? We played sports and we drank, right? And then I move on to university. What do? We play sports, we study, and we drank. And then I moved up north. What did we do? It was dark. It was cold. It was far away from home. What did we do? We drank. Right? Not even realizing how much we were drinking because the culture of where I was living was accepting it. It was normal to drink like that, the way we were drinking. I'm not talking 1 or 2 drinks. I'm talking above the binge drinking guidelines, often. Okay? So I've been there. I've been drinking. I've been there. I've used some cannabis. But I know where my flags are. Have to pay attention. There's a difference between misuse, overuse, and addiction as well, right? So just to say that our culture can trick us sometimes. So by coming into the health promotion world, it kind of opened up my eyes to see how far I had fallen off the rails for alcohol, right? So check in with yourself often to see how you're doing. Recognize your triggers. Know that just because everybody around you may be consuming or drinking or smoking, whatever it may be, it's still not a good thing for your health. And what I'm talking about with the addictions is the health aspect of it. Your health. We need you to be healthy to do your job. If you're not healthy because you have chronic disease or diabetes or obesity or cancer for whatever may reason because of your lifestyle, then you're not able to protect our country and to serve your country and to do what is expected out of you. Okay? Another thing that is big into the culture is parties, office parties, base parties, celebration activities, right? Somebody gets promoted, Christmas time, different stuff. So if somebody is struggling with an addiction, these times can be quite challenging for them. Okay, very challenging for them, especially if they are made to go to these functions, right? So if you're a person who is celebrating that your retirement, make sure that you keep in mind those who are struggling with addictions and offer other things, water, juice, pop, other foods, and ways for them to be able to come out and celebrate and not be so much faced with the alcohol in their face all the time. Why do people, other reasons why people would consume is to make them feel better or to make them feel nothing at all. Okay? They can't cope with what's going on right now. To forget. I want to forget everything that's going on. I want to forget what happened to me. I want to forget life. I'm not happy right now. I want to forget what I saw. Right? To cope with discrimination around identity, disability, right? Ethnicity, age, gender. Social pressures. People drink because they're pressured to feel accepted. Or smoke. Okay, when I say drink, I'm talking about gaming, smoking cannabis, smoking tobacco, prescription drugs kind of thing. I'm talking about all. I'm going to probably say drinking a lot, but I'm talking about the whole spectrum here. People consume to sleep better. Right? Some people have a hard time falling asleep. So what do? They have a joint before bed. They have a drink before bed. They take a sleeping pill. Right? And to be social. That was my thing. To be social. I love being social. Those who know me know that I like to have fun. I work hard and I play hard. Okay? It's a thing that we have to pay attention to, though. Okay? You don't want to be too social. So what is a standard drink? Do you know? Anybody watching other than Lisa and Edith? Do you know what a standard drink is? It's different for men and women. For men, it's... Oh, thank you. Okay, I'll use the word substances. Okay. For men, it's 3 standard drinks a day. And for women, it's 2 standard drinks a day. And a standard drink equals 13.6 grams of alcohol. So that converts to a 5 ounces of wine, of 12% wine, okay? Not your 13, your 14%. 1.5 ounces of your alcohol, like your rum, your whiskey, your vodka, which is 40% alcohol. Anything that's higher than 40% alcohol, you're above your drinking guidelines. Hi, Matt. Thanks for coming in. And then you have your beer, your 12-ounce beer, regular beer of 5% alcohol. So in Nova Scotia and elsewhere in Canada, I don't know about Tokyo, but there's craft beer all over the place now. People are opening up breweries all over. And their craft beers are coming in larger glasses and at a higher percentage. So if you go to have a pint at the local brewery, and you're thinking you're okay to drive, you may not be. Because that bottle or that pint is more than a standard drink. So keep that in mind. And when you're drinking a standard drink, it's 10 drinks a week for women and 15 drinks a week for men. So if you do the math, it doesn't add up. You need to take a day of break in between. Okay? And no, it's not like Weight Watcher points. You can't save them up for the weekend. I knew you were going to ask that, Matt, so it doesn't work. Okay? And this is for health benefits. Binge drinking. What is binge drinking? Okay, so binge drinking is defined as 5 or more drinks in a row for men and 4 or more drinks in a row for women. Okay, I'm going to say that a lot of us are into the binge drinking category, per se, with what's going on. Harmful effects of binge drinking is increased blood clot, increases your blood pressure, increases your risk of stroke, and decreases your threshold of a regular heartbeat. Okay, so these are all things that alcohol can do, binge drinking. So every weekend, if you're a weekend drinker, right, and you go out and you have multiple drinks all night long, you're putting yourself at risk, your health at risk. So for chronic disease and alcohol and how it relates, it's pretty scary when you think of it. I know that when I was drinking, I did not think of any of this stuff. I still do drink, and I'm not saying I don't drink, but I definitely don't drink like my Yellowknife days, I'm going to say, or my university days, right? Drinking 3.5 drinks a day can double or even triple the risk of developing cancer in the mouth, the larynx, the esophagus, and increase the risk of developing cancer of the colon, rectum, and breast by 1.5 times. That's 3.5 drinks a day. Okay? Strong relationships exist between levels of alcohol intake and risk of chronic health effects such as certain types of cancer, which I already mentioned, liver disease, heart disease, pancreatitis, and the nervous system problems. Exceeding the weekly limits increases the likelihood of these problems. Okay? Weekly limits are set because a person's average weekly consumption increases, so do the chronic risk of chronic disease and problems and addiction. So I don't know if people realize that when they're drinking, that the more you drink, the more of a health risk that you are at risk. Okay, for chronic disease, diabetes, obesity, pancreatitis, liver disease, all that stuff. Some studies show that red wine can help with their heart disease, but nobody should start drinking to prevent disease, right? Diseases like that, you should be focusing on a healthy diet, on being physically active, and other ways to improve your heart. Hi Kelly, thanks for tuning in. What else can I say here? So we wonder why maybe there's so much cancer going on, right? So I don't know if people are actually really paying attention to how much alcohol they're consuming, okay? Or substances they're consuming. Other related alcohol consequences. Can you think of anything else that could happen while you've drank too much? Anybody have blackout memory problems? Don't remember what they did the night before or how they got somewhere? Emotional problems, you're kind of on a roller coaster ride, right? Spiritual problems, don't know where to go, who to turn. Relationships or family problems, okay? When the substances become more and more and more, things don't go so well at home. Arguments are there. Financial problems are there. If you're out and about and you're high on whatever substance, you may be going out and having unprotected sex, okay, or sexual abuse. You're starting to have problems at school. You're starting to have problems at work, and then legal problems. If you start drinking behind or driving behind the wheel with the substance in your body, or breaking enters, or whatever it may be, stealing, whatever it may be. So those are all like problems that can happen by consuming too much substances. Okay. So clinical diagnosis of alcohol use disorder is determined by at least 2 of the following characteristics occurring within 12 months. Okay? So I'm going to give you a list, and if you've had at least 2 of these within the last 12 months, maybe reevaluate what's going on in your life and how you're consuming. So, unintentional overuse, okay? Time spent in activities to obtain and use to recover. So you sleep in all morning because you drank and you are hungover as can be. Cravings or strong desire to use. Okay, so the liquor store is closed and you can't get any alcohol, or the cannabis store is closed and you can't get your cannabis, but you want it. So you keep thinking and you're trying really hard to find ways to get access. It's causing problems at home, at work. Okay, so there's more problems. Your productivity is not as good. You are arguing more, right? You're not getting along as much. Reduced or stopping of social or occupational recreational activities. Okay, so right now it's a little bit different. We're all kind of home alone, but we've stopped everything. But there's still ways to stay connected, to FaceTime with our friends and to talk to people and to phone and stuff like that. But if you're completely off grid and you're not talking to anyone and you're avoiding people, that's a risk. Okay, that's a risk. Continue to use despite the problems that's going on. Okay, your tolerance level is gone up. Your pint no longer has the same effect. Okay, the gram of marijuana no longer gets you high. You need more. The painkillers are no longer working. You need to increase your dose, right? That's a tolerance buildup. Withdrawals, whether it's physical or psychological, in efforts to cut down or to control use. If you're saying to yourself, I need to stop, I need to slow down, then that's a flag. That's a flag that you should pay attention. Any of those, 2 of those in the last 12 months, are a risk of a disorder. Okay? I'll put them online after when I'm done talking. So, recommendations, guidelines for low-risk drinking to reduce short-term risk, right? So, drink with meals and not on an empty stomach. I know some people that drink on an empty stomach purposely, right? So, that's not good for your health. Have no more than 2 standard drinks in a 3-hour period. Alternate between alcohol, water, or coffee, or something like that between drinks. And avoid risky situations and activities. Okay, so if you know of an event that you're going to put yourself in that's going to involve getting annihilated and you're trying not to, then avoid those situations. Okay. Now, moving on to cannabis. Okay, cannabis has been legal now for a while, over a year, and in Canada, that is, not in Tokyo. And so there's some effects that we have to think about and talk about. So short-term effects is impaired memory, coordination, inability to focus and to react quickly. It can increase anxiety. It can increase panic and psychosis. And sometimes it does the opposite. And impairs the ability to drive safely and to operate equipment. So those are the short-term effects. Your long-term effects, it can damage the lungs, contain similar chemicals to smoked tobacco, affects mental health, increases the risk of anxiety, depression, psychosis, and schizophrenia, especially when you start using at a younger age, can create physical dependence or addiction. Frequent cannabis use that starts in adolescence increases these health effects. So, your kids, your teenagers, have a talk with them about cannabis. That is the drug of choice. When I was growing up anyways, I'm hearing that more serious drugs are the drug of choice now for our younger teenagers, which is scary. But yeah, it's the younger you start, the higher the risk. Your health risks are, right? So 1 in 11 people will develop an addiction to cannabis. So I don't know how many times I heard growing up that you cannot get addicted to cannabis. You can't get addicted. Well, no, maybe not physically you can get addicted, but psychologically you can. Okay? That's the difference. Some people only understand the physical dependency and not the psychological. I'm going to have a drink of my coffee. 1 in 6 teenagers who start consuming cannabis will develop an addiction. Okay? Between 1/4 and half of cannabis daily smokers are addicted or will develop an addiction. And youth are especially vulnerable to the effects of cannabis as their brain is not fully developed until the age of 25. So when your teenagers are consuming cannabis at a younger age and their brain is not done developing, it's affecting the way the brain is communicating. The brain kind of has cannabinoid receptors already that mimics the THC levels in the cannabis. So by consuming cannabis, it overfloods those receptors and then it changes the way those receptors interact in the brain, especially as the brain is developing. So it's very important to have a talk with those kids. Okay. Early, frequent, and more continued use increases the adverse effects. If you are pregnant or breastfeeding, okay, do not smoke cannabis, do not drink alcohol, do not use any substances actually. You should be talking to your doctor about any medication that you may think of consuming. I know, like when I was pregnant, I couldn't take Advil. Tylenol was the only thing I could use for my headaches. Okay, some people may not realize that. So please, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, have a conversation with your doctor before taking any substances. So, effects of cannabis if you're breastfeeding or pregnant, exposure to it can lower the birth rate. Long-term development effects in children and adolescents, such as low memory function, reduced ability to pay attention, decreased reasoning and problem-solving skills, hyperactivity, behavior, increased risk of future use. Okay. Signs and symptoms of cannabis use. Do you know any? Other than the red glossy eyes? The smell of it. But now with the edibles, you don't smell it as much. Unusual untalkativeness or talkativeness, it can go both ways. Inattention, not able to focus. Lethargy. Unsteady gait. Poor coordination. And anxiety. Okay, those are all signs of cannabis use. Mind you, keep in mind that just because somebody is having those signs does not mean that they are high on cannabis. There could be something else going on. So the recommendations to reduce the risk of cannabis use, the best way is to not use it. Okay, so if just because it's legal now doesn't mean you should be going out and smoking a doobie or trying an edible or whatever, a tea, whatever it may be, right? If you haven't used it in the past, why are you going to start now? Curious? You just didn't do it before because it was illegal and now it is? Okay? Just keep in mind, okay? It is a substance and you can get addicted to it. Delay taking up cannabis until later in life. Right? So if you're young, if you're a teenager and you're watching this and you've been thinking about smoking cannabis, don't do it. Yeah, your brain is still developing. Identify and choose low-risk cannabis products. So something with a low THC, right? Some of the THC products out there can be up to 90%. You don't want to start with something like that. Start with something as low as 5% kind of thing. Or with CBD. So researchers start the more CBD there is in the product, it cancels the effects of the THC, right? So that's a good thing to know. Avoid smoking burnt cannabis. So ingesting it is a safer way for your lungs. However, be careful it lasts longer and it takes longer to feel the by smoking burnt cannabis, you are ingesting more chemicals into your body. Limit and reduce how often you use cannabis or substances. Don't drive or operate any heavy machinery. Avoid cannabis altogether if you're at risk of a mental health problem. So if you have depression, if you have anxiety, if you have PTSD, I don't know, right? Like there are certain mental problems out there that cannabis will make it 1,000 times worse. Okay, so if you are struggling, it may be a conversation you need to have with your doctor. Okay, but try not to self. Oh, I forgot the word. Self cope. That's what I'm going to use. Sorry. And then again, if you're pregnant, don't use it. And avoid combining all the risk. Now, they're saying not to drink alcohol and to smoke cannabis and to use other substances all at once. But for some reason, Nova Scotia is selling their cannabis within their liquor stores, right? But so if you're use one or the other and not both, because you're putting yourself at greater risk of, yes, thank you, self-medicate. You're putting yourself at greater risk of your health. Right? Overuse, drug overdose, whatever it may be, feeling the effects, getting sick, passing out, whatever it could be. Internet addictions. Okay. So this is a fairly new one as well. There are psychological and behavioral addictions. Okay. The internet addiction includes 3 distinct groups. Excessive gaming. So those on their Xbox, whatever, playing virtual games all day, all night long, are not eating kind of thing, and not sleeping. And then you have your sexual preoccupation, so your porno sites that people can't get off, and your emails and your text messages. Okay, so when you're looking at internet addiction, those are the 3 distinct groups that you can kind of think about it. And there are 4 areas to assess whether a person has a problem or not. Okay? So the first one is time, right? Oops. Sorry. Just ask yourself, how much time are you online? Are you doing this? Are you staying online longer than you intended? Okay? Are the hours passing by without even noticing? So you're losing track of time. You're not eating your lunch or your breakfast or your supper because you've lost track of time. Are you neglecting other responsibilities? Whether it be at work or at home because of the amount of time you are spending online. Okay? So those are some things that you should ask, right? So Facebook. I know that my friends and I call it crack book because it's an addiction. We're always on it. Good night, Matt. I'll talk to you later. Sorry, I lost track. Matt made a funny comment. So, are you losing track of time, right? While you're online? How many times do we say, oh, I don't have time to exercise? But if you really look at your phone and how much time you spent on social media or gaming or watching pornos, you could probably find some time for your health, for your exercise, for your cooking, or for your cleaning, or whatever, paying your bills, or being on time at work, for example. Then the second area you want to assess if there's a problem. Okay? I know sometimes people wonder how you can have withdrawals and symptoms if it's not a physical dependency, but it happens. Mind you, the idea of a phantom vibrating syndrome is widely reported. Okay? Have you ever had your phone in your pocket where you thought it was vibrating or ringing and it wasn't? Okay? That shows the connection between our body and our technology. We think something's going on. We think we hear something. We think we feel it vibrate when it's not even there. Some questions you could ask for is, do you feel nervous? Thank you for the coffee, honey. Do you feel nervous, anxious, or at loss without your piece of technology? Do you need to have your phone on you 24/7, or can you leave it inside? Can you leave it on the charger for a day? Does it have to be attached to you all the time? Okay. Or if it's your gaming, your MP3 system, for example, do you feel lost if you're not on it? If it was to break, for example, would you feel tense, angry? Or would you feel a great relief when you were to be able to access it again? Okay? Kids, you see this type of tent. I see it in my kids all the time. I don't know how often I say to my family and friends, TV and screen time brings the devil out of my kids. I'm gonna say it. It makes them miserable. It makes them cranky. It makes them say mean things, hurtful things, even though I know they don't mean it. They just pull on those heartstrings of mine because I've shut the TV off. Okay? So adults may not have that tantrum per se, outside burst, but internal, they may be having it. Okay? Are you anxious or depressed or frustrated when the internet or your text messaging is not accessible? Right? Where I go to my camper is, I have a camper on towards Loon Lake, and there's no internet there, and sometimes I do feel anxious, especially when I have some work to do or I'm waiting for a phone call or something. But other times, most of the time, it's a relief to be away from all this technology and just to be living in the moment, just enjoying what's around me. Okay. Another thing to be, if it's going to be a problem, is your tolerance. Okay, this includes the need for continuously better the technology. So you always need to get something better, whether it's a better phone, a better gaming system, a better computer, and the amount of hours you use. Okay, so started with 1 hour a day, you're up to 5 hours a day, you're up to 10 hours a day. All of a sudden, you're gaming all night. Okay, and then you've not slept, and then you have to go to work, or you have to get up and thanks for coming in. So tolerance is a huge thing, right? Are you spending more money than when you can afford to getting the newest technology? Are you spending money on building your avatar, for example? It's affecting us. Is being online affecting the amount of time you're sleeping, right? And then you have negative social repercussions. Okay, so another area to assess if you're having a problem. Some questions you should ask yourself. Have you decreased the amount of time you spend with your family and friends in order to be online? Has staying connected online kept you from socializing with people in your local area? Right now we're a little different because being online is connecting us together. Okay, so it's going to be interesting when we actually go back into our normal routine after the COVID-19 to see how we're going to interact with one another. Are we still going to be on the computer, on our phones as much, or are we really going to embrace each other's physically? Right? Are your hobbies and interests limited to online activities? Okay, so have you stopped your hobbies? Do you no longer play your guitar because you're stuck gaming? Kind of thing. Have you ever been criticized by someone close to you for the amount of time you spend connected to your technology? Okay, so that should be a sign. If your partner is saying you're spending way too much time online or on your gaming system, pay attention to what they're saying. They're trying to tell you that I miss you. I need you. Right? I need you around. I need you to be focused. I need you here, present, not in a virtual reality. Do you, on a regular basis, go online or message someone else while in social situations? So you're at a party, you're at a football game, you're at the mess, whatever it may be, and are you on your computer? Are you on your phone? Your date night, and we see it all the time now, with people at restaurants sitting at a table and nobody's talking. They're on their phones. Right? So those are the 4 areas that you want to assess if there's a problem with internet addiction or online addiction. Okay? How much time you're spending, if you're having withdrawals, your tolerance, and your negative social consequences. So, how is video gaming like other addictions? Okay, so video game, like other addiction, is increased time spent by playing. I think it's fair to say since COVID-19 started, we're all spending more time on our screens. Kids are, parents are, even grandparents, right? We're all learning. We're all learning. This is a pandemic. Don't be so hard on yourself if you are allowing yourself or your kids to be online more than usual. But set boundaries. Set boundaries for yourself and your kids. Okay? Strong emotional attachments to the activity. A perfect example is the tantrums that I mentioned earlier with my kids. Okay? Adults have that emotional attachment too, but not necessarily in tantrums. They would get it in a mood swings, aggravated, sad, distracted. Okay? Those would be the kind of patterns that you would see. So you're constantly thinking about your game, you're constantly thinking about Facebook, your Instagram, whatever it may be. While you're at work, with your friends, with your family, you're looking for ways to make your game better. You're looking for ways to spend money. You're spending money so that you can get further into your game or get your app better, right? Those farming apps that we have. SimCity and stuff like that, where you have to purchase things to kind of grow your community and all that stuff, right? It all kind of has an addictive factor, right? Financial issues start to happen. Relationship breakdown start to happen. Work issues. You're asking, how can gaming affect my work? Well, if you're gaming all night long, and you have to go to work, you're kind of like hungover. You are tired. You're sluggish, you're not able to concentrate, and you're probably still focusing on that game that you were just playing all night and not focusing on your task. Whether your task may be at home, taking care of your kids, cooking supper, cleaning, gardening, or your task at work, fixing airplanes, paying people money, right? Stuff like that. So, what is an addiction-free internet lifestyle? How does it relate? Addiction in a broad term that often gets confused with physical dependency. Okay, so often people think that an addiction, you have to have a physical dependency, but there's not. The psychological or behavioral addiction as well. Looking at the internet and technology as an area of concern is still a relatively new field. Okay, so there's more research and more study that needs to be out there. And the language is sometimes confusing, okay, on how to describe what's going on. But however, there are psychological or behavioral addictions that we can look at. Sorry, I just read that. I'm reading the same thing again. My apologies. Okay, so if you are a gamer, ask yourself these questions. How much time are you spending gaming? Do you have a time limit? And if you have a time limit, are you sticking to it? Okay? And when you're out with your friends, or when you're out, not with your friends anymore because we are socially isolated, but when you're out and about, are you constantly thinking about that game? Or can you focus on other things and be mindful in the moment? Are your family members, your co-workers, your kids, your parents, are they saying you're spending too much time online? Get off the computer, get off the MP3, get off the system, come outside. Okay, those are all some things that you want to pay attention to. So signs of a gaming addiction. Salient. Gaming becomes the most important activity in a person's life and dominates their thinking, feelings, and behaviors. Okay. Even if the person is not gaming, they will be thinking about it the next day, their next plan, their next move. Okay? Mood modification. This refers to the subject's experience when someone feels through gaming, the buzz or the high or the sense of escape. Your tolerance. You're playing more and more and more online. Okay? Your withdrawal symptoms can be unpleasant emotions or physical effects that a person may feel when they stop playing their game. Shakes, moodiness, irritability. Conflict. It can take form in the conflict between the gamer and the people around them, conflicts with their jobs, social life, school, or other interests, sports. It can even be conflict within themselves, internal conflict. And relapse, the tendency for old game playing patterns to return after a period of abstinence or control. Okay? So same thing with your addictions. You can relapse. Okay? Gambling and addiction share some common it's a hard word to say. Common characteristics. So some similarities are preoccupation, thoughts of gambling, and how to get the money in which gambling becomes constant. So right now we've gone from online addiction to gambling addiction, okay? Just so you know. The tolerance increases in the amount of substance consumed and the desired effects. So they are betting more money, for example. Relapse, okay? So they stop gambling and they go... they stop for years, a month, or whatever, and then all of a sudden they start gambling again, like they did before. Withdrawals, their restlessness, irritability, they want to chase the wins, okay? They can't get away. They need that high, okay? Or they've lost and they need to keep going back so they can make up for those losses that they've lost, okay? No limit or a specific group. Okay, both addictions are indifferent to class, race, gender, right? So it can target anyone. Gambling addiction can target anyone, just like any addiction can target anyone. Repeated attempts to control or stop or cut down. Give up social, occupational, recreational activities so you can gamble. Continue to use drug and alcohol or gamble despite the consequences of social, legal, and health problems. And an inability to pay mounting debts. Okay, so those are some similarities. The differences from gambling addictions to other addictions are there's no substances taken into the body. You're more likely to be hiding the problem, right? So you can't see the physical effects of an addiction problem, of a gambling problem, right? So you can maybe hide it a bit better. Physical symptoms are not immediate, obvious, okay? So because you're not consuming a substance, the physical symptoms are not so there, but eventually they will come out. Illegal activity, usually non-violent, okay, and more likely to have suicidal thoughts. So suicide is high amongst gamblers. Can you think of a reason why? One of the biggest reasons is for losing their money, right? Some people go and put their whole paycheck onto a gambling device, fingers crossed that they will win, and then they just lost their whole paycheck. They can't feed their kids, they can't pay their mortgage, they can't pay their bills. They are hitting an all-time low, and they don't see any other way out, and they look to suicide. Okay. So warning signs specific to online gambling. So is the amount of time you're spent gambling online compared to other activities that you're doing. Showing special excitement for new gambling games. Feeling that change in online gambling activities will bring you good luck. Okay, I'm going to try this new game because it will bring me good luck. And the size of betting increases. Okay, so if you start off with $5 and all of a sudden you're betting $100 to kind of get that thrill, that's a sign. That's a warning sign that you should be aware of yourself and people around you should be aware of. Enabling. What is enabling? Okay, a quick discussion here. Enabling consists of ideas, attitudes, and behaviors that unwillingly allow or encourage substance use to continue by preventing the person from experiencing the consequences of their behavior. Okay? So this can happen at an individual or an organization level. So for example, my husband's an alcoholic and I know he's drinking, for example, I'm just using an example, but I go and I buy him beer. even though I know he shouldn't be. Or somebody spent all their money on gambling, right? And they can't pay their bills. So then a friend or parent or a spouse or loved ones gives them money so they can pay their bills. That is a type of enabling. As an organizational enabling, it could be lack of policies, resources, and stuff like that. Or turning a blind eye, saying, I didn't see anything, right? So warning signs of potential substance and gambling and addictions. So some physical signs that you want to look into someone to recognize if there's an addiction or a substance problem. Addiction is fatigue, weight loss, bloodshot eyes, etc. Okay? Or it could even be weight gain. Emotional signs. The person has different mood swings, depression, anger, remorse. Behavioral signs would be a change in their personal appearance. Okay? Their hygiene. They've just kind of let everything go. They're not taking care of themselves anymore. Okay? Those are some signs that somebody may be going through an addiction, right? Or substance use problems. So what might prevent somebody from going for help? Why do we not, if we recognize that we have a problem with a substance use or an addiction or a gaming or gambling problem, why aren't we going for help? Well, some barriers to treatment would be the fear of consequences, whether it's a relationship breakdown or the loss of a job. The stigma. The stigma is huge. We need to stop that stigma. Okay? What are others going to say about me if I go for help? Am I a loser? Am I a failure? Why did I let this happen to me? Okay? Stigma can be other people's vision on you, and you can self-stigmatize as well, putting that pressure on yourself. Denial is another one. This is not happening to me. It can't happen to my family, right? Or my coworker. It's not that bad. Lying for someone so they don't get in trouble, right? Enabling of others is, like I said earlier, you're giving them money so they can pay their debt or buy their groceries and stuff. Know your resources, okay? Know your resources, your local resources around here. Lisa and I have been posting so many stuff on Facebook for your local resources, right? Talking about it will help reduce the stigma. But if you're talking to someone and they are in a different stage, it could be sometimes talking to a wall. So there are 6 different stages of change. There is the pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and relapse phase. So talking to someone about a substance use or an addiction will depend on what kind of stage this person is. And I'm going to talk about the stages of change model on Tuesday, the 19th of May. Okay, so I'm not going to go into that right now. So what we want to do here at Health Promotion is to focus on harm reduction. We don't want you to stop having fun, okay? We don't want you to stop drinking. We don't want you to stop smoking cannabis. We just want you to know your harm reduction approaches, okay? We want you to realize what are the health risks by consuming, by using a substance, okay? We want you to be able to perform at your job, right? We want you to have fun, but we want you to do it responsibly and without health consequences. Our goal is to reduce harm in the individual and within our community, okay? We don't want to stop the party. We just want to make sure that you are educated and that you know the effects and the risk of consuming substances. Okay? Some examples that have been out there to help harm reductions are your designated driver programs, right? Responsible hosting, your serving policies. Those are all examples of what's going on that we are doing to try to help individuals and communities. So, if you are going out and you're putting yourself at risk and you are you're a recovering alcoholic, you're a recovering substance user, and you still want to go out and have fun, set your limits, okay? Avoid situations that's going to let you lapse. Plan ahead of what you're going to do if something happens, if you get triggered. And if you are someone that's trying to just be healthier and cut back on substance use, set a limit in advance. Choose a limit that allows you to stay in control. Pace your drinks or your cannabis or your gaming or your substance. Just pace it so you don't feel the effects so quickly. Often we want to consume quickly so we feel the effects, so we can numb our pain, feel nothing, or feel better, right? But there are other ways to deal with our mental health than by going through substances. Reduce or modify your substance use depending to your condition. So if you're sick, if you're tired, if you have an empty stomach, those kind of things. Okay. Some self-help strategies could be, like we already mentioned, set up a thing. Okay, thank you, Lisa. Set up limits. Okay, so gaming, gambling, substance, alcohol limits. Use of daily substance use. So drinking, tobacco, coffee, over-the-counter meds. Use a diary. Okay, so if you are taking pain medications every day for whatever reason, maybe start recording what you're doing. Or if you're drinking a lot more because of COVID-19, start recording your drinking pattern, right? Just so you can see if there's a pattern or not. And if you can see that if you're developing an addiction or something like that. Use strategies to avoid intoxication. List the activities or situations where you're most likely to drink or to gamble or to smoke heavily. Okay? Develop a plan to replace high-risk activities with an alternate activity. Develop ways to avoiding and coping with emotions that trigger your addiction. Check with your doctor. Make a doctor's appointment with your medical officer. Okay? Talk to them if you're suffering from anxiety, depression, or negative emotions. Okay? Those are all self-help. There's nothing. Have a monthly or a regular checkup with a counselor just to get your emotions out of there. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be mentally ill to have a conversation with a counselor or somebody else, a friend. So I guess my key message here is problems can happen to anyone, regardless of who you are, your race, your gender, your age, your job title. Addictions target anyone and everyone that lets them. Change is possible. There's people out there to help you. There's addiction counselors, there's courses, there's webinars, and there's people who are recovered addicts that are there to help you. And people overcome to survive. It requires a lot of work within yourself. In order for you to overcome an addiction or a substance use or gaming or whatever, it has to come within you. I can't tell you to change. Your parents can't tell you to change. Your spouse, they can tell you until you turn blue in the face. But this is something that needs to come within yourself. Okay? I have a bunch of resources here. I don't know if I can do this with my phone. So, Provincial Mental Crisis Helpline. Anyone can call this. 1-888-429-8167. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, an addiction, or anything like that, that is open for anyone. Call it. It doesn't hurt to call. Take 5 Gambling Support Network. 1-888-347-8888. Those are Nova Scotia resources that are there to help you. Okay? To help you, give you tips and resources to help you overcome whatever you're going through. Okay? Up next, so that concludes my presentation today on addiction. Thank you for your patience. This was my first briefing on addictions per se. I usually only talk about the cannabis, so this is my first one doing addictions and substance use. online at that. I was having technical difficulties at first. So I was a little scatterbrain at first throughout my presentation, so I apologize for that. Upcoming courses. We at Health Promotion are going to start with short lives, Facebook. So that's about 15-minute presentations that we're going to be doing weekly between Lisa and I. And our first one is May 19th after the May long weekend. And that's when I'm going to talk to you about the stages of change. A quick 15-minute blur about to educate you what is the stages of change. We also have our live Facebook presentation on the 21st of May at 10 o'clock, and Lisa will be doing a briefing on managing angry moments, constructive anger versus destructive anger, trigger thoughts and strategies to manage them. Flashback Friday, which is our weekend wellness webinars. I'm posting a bunch of pre-recorded webinars on the site. So you can access them if you're bored, right? So various topics from nutrition to sleep to addiction to tobacco to mental health to stress, whatever it may be. And don't forget to check our online Cath Connection website, where weekly there are live webinars from our national team. We're out there. So yeah. After this, I'm going to put a bunch of resources on the Facebook Health Promotion page. There are tons of Nova Scotia resources out there. I've kind of plucked them out and put them all into a presentation for you, so you don't have to go and search online and looking for whatever you're looking for. So bear with me. I'll put those up this afternoon. I want to thank you for your time to listen. If you are struggling with an addiction or substance use or gaming and gambling, reach out. Don't be alone. Reach out to us, myself, Health Promotion Specialist, Lisa White, a friend. It can be a counselor. Just reach out to anyone. Just talk about it. Don't be alone. Thank you for your time. Hang in there, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.